"You're trespassing. Leave this construction site immediately." That's what the HOA president screamed at me while standing on my land. The land they had already started tearing up with bulldozers. But here's the twist. I wasn't just a landowner. I wasn't just some random guy they thought they could push around. I was the county inspector, and they had just made the biggest mistake of their lives. And that mistake, it ended up costing them everything. Let me take you back to the start of this insane story. When my father passed away, I inherited a 40-acre property just outside the city. It wasn't flashy. It was mostly open fields with a few oak trees and a little creek running through. But here's the key detail. My property was directly next to a brand new subdivision with a very aggressive HOA. They had fancy gates, strict rules, and a president, let's call him Gary, who strutted around like he was mayor of the entire county. At first, I ignored them. I kept to myself, fixed up my land, and enjoyed the peace and quiet. But Gary, he wasn't the type to leave people alone. One day, I noticed surveyors on my land. They were marking the ground with spray paint, hammering stakes, and measuring distances. I walked over and asked what they were doing. One of them shrugged and said, "We're prepping the site for the new gas station." I nearly dropped my coffee. Gas station? On my land? The guy looked confused. The HOA told us they had approval." That's when it clicked. Gary and his board had cooked up some grand plan to build a community gas station and convenience store, without bothering to check who actually owned the land. I drove straight to the HOA office, slammed the door open, and demanded answers. Gary was sitting at a big desk like he was some CEO. He didn't even look surprised to see me. "Oh, you again," he sneered. "Yes, the gas station. It'll be a wonderful addition to the community. Don't worry, you'll be compensated." "Compensated? This is my land. You can't just build on it." Gary leaned back in his chair and smirked. "The community needs this more than you need an empty field." The board voted. "It's decided." I stared at him in disbelief. That's not how property law works. He waved his hand dismissively. "It's how things work here." A week later, I woke up to the sound of heavy machinery. I ran outside, and sure enough, bulldozers were plowing through my field. Workers were pouring concrete. Trucks were hauling in materials. They hadn't just trespassed, they had already started construction. I stormed onto the site, yelling for them to stop. That's when Gary rolled up in his golf cart, sunglasses on, barking orders like a dictator. "You're trespassing," he shouted at me. I laughed bitterly. "On my own land? You've got to be kidding." "Not for long," he smirked. "Paperwork is in motion. Once we finish, it'll officially be HOA property." That's when I knew I wasn't dealing with arrogance anymore. I was dealing with fraud. Here's the part Gary didn't know. By day, I wasn't just a landowner. I worked as a county inspector for zoning, construction, and property compliance. I knew every law, every regulation, and every loophole these clowns were violating. And trust me, they were breaking all of them. They had no permits, no zoning approval, no environmental assessment, and they were building on private land without consent. This wasn't just a violation, it was a full-blown lawsuit waiting to happen. And I was about to deliver it. Instead of blowing up right there, I played it smart. I pretended to back off. "Fine," I told Gary. "Do what you want. I'll just stay out of your way." He smirked, thinking he had won. Meanwhile, I started documenting everything. I took photos, videos, and drone footage of their illegal construction. I recorded conversations, saved every threatening letter the HOA sent me, and even pulled county maps proving my ownership. Then, I filed an official report, as the inspector. A week later, I showed up at the site in my official county inspector uniform, badge clipped to my belt, clipboard in hand. The workers froze. Gary stormed over, looking irritated. "What are you doing here?" he barked. I calmly flipped open my folder. "Conducting an inspection." "You can't," he started, But then his jaw dropped when he saw my badge. That's when it hit him. The man he had been bullying, threatening, and stealing land from was the one person who had the legal authority to shut him down. And that's exactly what I did. I walked the site, pointing out violation after violation. Unsafe construction practices, no permits on file. No zoning approval for a commercial structure. And of course, illegal trespassing on private property. Then I turned to the workers. This site is officially shut down. Pack it up. They didn't argue. They started loading up equipment while Gary turned red in the face, screaming at everyone. You can't do this. This is our community project. I looked him dead in the eyes. No, Gary. This is my land. And you just built a gas station on it without permission. It didn't end there. I took the HOA to court, armed with mountains of evidence. The judge didn't need long. The HOA was found guilty of trespassing, fraudulent land claims, illegal construction, environmental violations. The damages? $3.2 million. That covered the cost of tearing down the half-built gas station, restoring my land, legal fees, and punitive damages for their reckless behavior. The HOA board was bankrupted. Homeowners turned on Gary, demanding his resignation. Some even sued him personally for putting their community at risk. As for me, I walked out of that courtroom with justice and a fat check. The gas station was demolished. My land was restored to its original state. Gary. He was forced to resign in disgrace, and last I heard, he moved out of the subdivision entirely. The HOA never recovered from the financial hit. Their reputation was destroyed, and their power evaporated overnight. Meanwhile, I invested the settlement into improving my property, built a barn, planted trees, and turned the once empty field into something my family could truly enjoy. And every time I drive past the edge of that subdivision, I smile. Because I know the HOA will never forget the day they tried to steal from the wrong person. So what's the takeaway here? It's simple. Abuse of power always backfires. The HOA thought they were unstoppable. They thought they could bend the law, bully their neighbors, and build whatever they wanted, wherever they wanted. In their minds, the rules didn't apply to them. They believed their board votes and their sense of entitlement carried more weight than deeds, permits, or the law itself. But here's the truth. No amount of arrogance can outrun accountability. You can put up signs, you can bark orders, you can even bring in bulldozers, but when you cross the line and trample on someone else's rights, reality will catch up to you. And in this case, it didn't just catch up, it came crashing down. They didn't just lose a project. They lost millions. They lost their reputation. They lost the very authority they thought made them untouchable. That's the irony of arrogance. It blinds people. The HOA was so caught up in their own power trip that they never stopped to ask the simplest question, whose land are we even on? They didn't do the paperwork. They didn't follow the law. They didn't show an ounce of respect. And that ignorance turned into their downfall.